Bueno, es un gran gusto saludarlos desde acá a todos los que nos acompañan. Estamos en la COP30 en Belém do Pará, en Brasil, en el pabellón de la CAF. Y un tema clave para hablar del clima y la agenda de desarrollo son instrumentos innovadores financieros. ¿Qué está pasando con el capital privado? ¿Qué está pasando con el interés en esta agenda? Y no podemos tener dos socios más importantes para la CAF que el BNDES, que es el Banco de Desarrollo de Brasil. Acá está con nosotros Daniela Baccas, es la cabeza de sostenibilidad, y Patria, que es uno de los fondos más grandes del mundo que ha desarrollado distintos instrumentos para abordar esta agenda. Con nosotros está Alexandre Coutinho, que es un socio de Patria y es el responsable de deuda en Brasil. Voy a pasar a inglés para poder tener un diálogo fluido. So I'm going to start these questions with you, Daniela. I will start. BNDES has really been a pioneer in inciting the ESG agenda, in particular the climate-related agenda, through different instruments such as EcoInvest, such as the Llamada de Clima. Could you tell us a little bit about your strategy and what you're seeing?
Sure. Thank you for the question. It's an honor. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And we have been actually we just reviewed our social, environmental, and climate policy at BNDES. We have SSR policy, and we connected to this policy, sustainable policy, an action agenda, an action plan with 4 axes. And one of the main axes is the ecological transformation, where we can put all our efforts in structuring projects, catalyze investments, financing, and everything that capital markets, everything that BNDES does in this agenda, in this axis. It will also have streamlined ESG risks, climate, environmental, social risks in the other axis. So we have to boost this agenda. We also have an internal axis for human resource, collaboration, suppliers, aiming at BNDES aspects in a general internal coordination. And finally, the 4th axis is transparency, where we can measure the KPIs, the indicators, and put forward all the efforts, transparency for the whole society with dashboards, with figures, so where we can convey all these efforts. And as you mentioned, Alejandra, these 2 examples we can show connections with how BNDES is catalyzing, is mobilizing the climate agenda at the bank. Because we are here in the COP30 and we hear a lot mobilization, capital mobilization and implementation. So we have these 2 sides to show here, and actually EcoInvest and Llamada de Clima, they are the important examples of this agenda. So through EcoInvest, it's a program from the Transformation Ecological Plan from the Finance Ministry in Brazil. So we connected our BNDES agenda with a public policy structure for that. And then EcoInvest is a program where they match concessional funds with catalyzing private funds. So BNDES participated in the first 2 auctions. So we leverage a concessional fund and leverage another part in raising funds externally. And so we can have a more robust structure of capital to finance climate projects. The first one was more dedicated to all the lines of decarbonization and mitigation of the climate fund. But the second one is specifically more based in nature-based solutions, because this auction aimed at tackling the degraded areas, pasture-degraded areas in Brazil. As you might know, Brazil has a very concentrated GHG emissions in land use, deforestation and agriculture use and agroforestry use. So tackling recovery of degraded areas, we will contribute a lot to our NDC, to Brazilian NDC, and we can leverage with this program auction almost 9 billion reais in investments, concessional fund with the part of the catalytic aspects and private funds. So we'll try to search for these projects and leverage them. And another example is the Chamada Clima, that it's 5 billion reais, Brazilian reais, dedicated to a call for proposal to select fund managers to invest, to create either equity funds, participation funds, and also credit funds. And 4 billion for the parts of equity funds and 1 billion reais for the credit funds. And all the 2 parts of the selections dedicated an agenda of decarbonization and mitigation, green finance in general, boosting energy transition, biofuels, and other segments of the climate agenda. But also we had a line for biodiversity and nature-based solutions, where we aim to restore forest restoration. Basically, that's one of we can remove GHG from the atmosphere and contribute for our NDC. We also have many other examples. We have investment funds. I was talking to him before. Have many investment funds for decarbonization, energy transition, for critical minerals, that we understand that's an agenda of connecting industry, climate agenda, and generating jobs for Brazil. So there are many initiatives where we can leverage this agenda. And also we are secretary of the Brazilian Investment Platform. That's another part of the ecological transition plan from the Financial Ministry. And we do the secretariat, and we have allocated to match. It's a match agenda for investors, so we can use as a hub for connecting capital to boost the project. So I think it's another example of mobilizing capital, private, concessional, and also using BNDES as a development bank to articulate and mobilize the partnerships, the raising funds, and the connection with public policy. So we feel that this is how we can mobilize and induce the climate agenda together with both kinds of capital.
Thank you so much, Daniela. No, this is very... I feel that BNDES plays exactly the role a development bank should play for a sector, for a country, which is actually de-risking, attracting, mobilizing other capital to agendas that might be either there's not enough knowledge, or there's too much risk. And actually through these types of instruments that are very successful, that CAF also collaborates with BNDES to do it, it's really impressive. And now we're going to go to another example now from the fund and from the debt side, Patria. Especially in the last few years, you've had a lot of experience in developing different instruments to especially mobilize, which I think is like the word of this panel, to mobilize capital towards sustainable infrastructure, development, conservation. Why don't you tell us a little bit, Alexandre, what the experience is?
Yeah, as an nation, mobilization is the word of the event.
Yes.
So everyone is talking about mobilization, not just here. It's really in order to maximize the impact of capital, mainly capital from the BNDES and CAF, is in how does it work, mainly in our point of view as a private portfolio manager, and we work basically with private capital. But the key aspect is really the stamp of approval of institutions such as BNDES and CAF. It's not only about money, it's about intelligence, equality, and reputation. So when there is a new front that you have to invest, something new that nobody else has never invested before, you are the name that you have to talk with. and it works in both directions. So sometimes we try to test some ideas with you, and sometimes it's the opposite, as we are always doing, as this long list of initiatives of BNDES. Okay, let's contact the market, let's convince them that's a good deal, it's a good opportunity to deploy money. And the secret is really to have an open channel of communication with you and convince the other investors to bring money to your agenda, because it's development agenda, is the environmental agenda. And it's amazing that over the years, the investors, even they were a little bit skeptical about, okay, is a good ENS impact, but what about the return? By the end, the returns are really much better than average. So the best way to convince the private investors, so we create a positive agenda, social, environmental, and at the same time making profits to pay your retirement plan, your benefit plan for the employees, or any kind of the funds from universities, etc. So they start to convince more and more that you can make money with a positive impact. But once again, it's key to have your experience, presence, intelligence, and also a stake to align interests and to prove the concept.
No, well, thank you. I completely agree, and I think that's one of the successes of being able to do your job as a development bank or a financial institution, which is actually to maybe switch those paradigms, that helping these types of agendas like the green agenda, climate agenda, biodiversity, and the social agendas is not philanthropy, it's not something that you just do for the good. You can actually have returns from it, and it's a win-win situation. So it's really wonderful to see actors like Patria really delving in and working collaboratively to do it. So I would like to close this panel with an open question that has, I think, two sides. One is sort of like what are some of the challenges that we're facing to further this agenda, because there's a lot more to do, and some of the opportunities that we're seeing in different areas in the coming years. I don't know who would like to start.
Yeah, in my view, there are two dynamics of challenge that's mainly with this agenda for Latin America. The number one, mainly when you are talking about international investors, is really we have to do the mobilization, but these investors, they need to sign large checks. So we have to have a very strong pipeline of transactions. We need to scale. So for Latin America in general, I would say the most challenging aspect is scale, in order to put together several projects around the region, in order to justify large global investors you bring. Specifically in Brazil, natural Brazil is a part of the solution indeed, because when you talk about Latin America, you have to talk about Brazil. If you want to put together a portfolio of Latin America assets, you have to have a meaningful position in Brazil. In Brazil, we have some challenge to bring international investors, in my view, but locally it's working greatly. There is no question about that. We are convincing individuals to invest, pension funds to invest, insurance companies to invest. All the angles are positive. But we have the ambitions to bring more international money to Brazil to invest with this ENS agenda here. And what are the challenges? One of the challenges is FX, because the advantage that Brazil has is it has a very strong currency. So you don't have to talk about US dollars. You can really put your contracts investing in local currency, as it is known by international investors as BRL, reais. So we have a strong currency. However, we do have the volatility aspect. So in order to convince them to invest, you have to check this issue, hedging. So how can you provide an expensive hedging long term? There are a lot of discussion. We always, BNDES, Patria, CAFI, all the development agents, we are always doing this brainstorm in order to find a solution for that. And also, I believe that we could improve a little bit also the dynamic concerning, mainly the case of credit, in order to not have tax barriers for foreign investors. And why? Because when you are a foreign investor, major pension funds in Canada, they want to. There are specific countries that the dynamic is different, but in general, when a foreign investor wants to invest in credit in Brazil, they have to pay taxes. But when they want to buy a security issued by the government, NTNB, they don't pay taxes. If they want to buy equity share, so there is a discussion. And I believe that if you make more flexible these two angles, first, the most challenging one, that's hedging, and then the tax optimization would be easier to bring foreign money. And for Latin America, we have to have larger scale because these investors, they want to sign larger checks. That's my view of the regional challenge that we have to face in the coming years.
No, that's very interesting because also, I mean, in a sense, and you see it here, and we saw it, for example, I mean, the Amazon transcends the borders of just Brazil. Many of these problems of the biomas and the issues are common. So us as a regional development bank, hedging, all these types of instruments where you can think about greater scale or learning from one country to the other, one instrument is fundamental. And we see that also with BNDES, and when we go and visit other development banks, they tell us, you know, could we learn from exchanges from what BNDES does and vice versa? So, you know, I do think that it's a great example, like from Brazil to the region and region to Brazil. But anyway, please let us know a little bit, like, what your thoughts on it.
My thoughts, I'll bring an example that can match a little bit the hedge risks and also some challenges, but how at the same time how we can circumvent those challenges, bringing some solutions ahead. When we started, for example, we are manager of the Amazon Fund. We receive donations on how Brazil can reduce the emissions from deforestation from the Amazon biome, and then we allow to receive grants from many countries. And but it's a non-reimbursable fund. No? So it's grants also for protect and conserve, to have many projects to conserve the Amazon region. And basically our restoration programs were in a non-reimbursable base before, using, for example, the Amazon Fund. But then it came out that actually the forest agenda is so important to Brazil, to our biomes, that we can transform, that can shift this agenda in a reimbursable agenda, in an economic agenda, generating green jobs, bringing industry together to have sustainable management of the forest, extractive and sustainable extractivism, and working with communities in a social agenda as well. So BNDES started to communicate with partners and try to connect with finance restoration forest agenda. And this was very hard at the beginning because
Partners on the local level, partners on
on the local level, some startups were being created to deal with, to tackle with this agenda, but with no track records in credit. No guarantees because they have the forest or have to search for a forest to plant the trees, and so that was very hard at the beginning. But then BNDES is also the agent operator of the climate fund in Brazil. The climate fund was created in COP15 in 2009 by President Lula and the Copenhagen COP. And it was a very innovative agenda for Brazil because the main resource, the main budget of this fund, it's a fund connected to the Environment and Climate Ministry in Brazil, and the BNDES is the operator agent. But at that time, they brought some part of the oil royalties to fulfill this climate fund. But actually, we were operating this fund, but with concessional funds, but in a very short and a very small scale at the beginning, since 2023, basically, when the Brazilian Treasury decided to issue sustainable bonds to refill the climate fund in Brazil. And then the scale was escalated a lot, and we were dealing with now each year with 10 billion reais since the sovereign bonds were raised. And then we remain with the monetary policy in Brazil decides the interest rates, and the smallest interest rate is derived is dedicated for forests. because we understand, no, the Brazil understand that it's important to have the lowest interest rate to deal with a new economy, a new segment of the economy, a new sector, basically, that's restoration of forests, Brazil. And then we now have in 2 years, we have more than 1 billion reais approved in these projects. And also how to deal with guarantees, because we are a bank, and so we have to deal with guarantees. And then some projects are dealing also with other banks, with off-takers, and we are aiming at carbon credits as well. And we're working how to standardize on how to support more carbon credits in a way that can be the receivables later on. So we are trying to understand the carbon market, the voluntary carbon market, and how we can boost that with integrity and with and that can be served as a guarantee later on. So it's a new sector, a new segment, and we have all these elements together: concessional funds and Brazil raising funds from foreign investors to fulfill the climate fund, and taking the risk, the red risks, because we support the clients in Brazilian reais, so the projects, they are not incurring in the currency risk. So all this can match, and we are leveraging a new sector, combining all the guarantees and mobilizing funds and articulating, because BNDES, we are a public bank, development bank, and we're articulating, raising funds with partners like CAFE and dealing with private funds and everyone to bring together the agenda. Just an example of a segment, but it's an example how we can see our role and our agenda in boosting climate aspect.
And it's a very good solution, because by the end you did the issuance in dollars, you invest in reais, in local currency, and you did the hedge by yourself. So problem solved.
Yes,
so it's a
Brazil
solution.
Is the risk. It's a public policy with a public bank and a new sector with inducing new projects for achieving NDC goals.
Very elegant solution, definitely.
No, I have to say that it's very, I don't know, there must be other agendas that are so dynamic, but I think especially in the climate agenda, you see innovation happening all the time. And you come to see a reality that you can actually monetize protecting nature, you can monetize conservation. So, and you guys, you're both living proof that this is happening. So, and with different innovations of all the different instruments, I think that it's a great way to close this panel. The key words I would say are definitely mobilization. It's these types of instruments to bring in capital for these agendas, definitely innovation, and also articulation, as you well said, and working in these different actors, Public Development Bank in Brazil, regional funds and all the different instruments, and regional development banks to work towards this agenda. So thank you.
Thank you.